Hey guys, welcome to Conversations with a Recovering Loan Officer. I'm Michael Neff, and I'm joined by my good friend Mark MacInerney, who has graciously agreed to come on and just chat with us a little bit about his history and about what makes him tick. He's got a great story, comes from a really unique background, very diverse background, and as well as built a business by design, which I think a lot of loan officers don't think is possible. So I'd like to just, welcome you to the podcast, and thanks for joining me.
You got it, Michael. Happy to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, so it's my pleasure. So, we talked right before this a little bit about your history. Can you give us like a, truncated version of where you came from, how you started in this industry, and about kind of like the various businesses you were running before you kind of got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, it almost sounds like, a bad, like one of those bar jokes, like an Irishman, a hip hop artist, and a mortgage broker all walk into a bar. And it's actually how I start a lot of my presentations. I'm flashing slides of an Irishman, me, and then this old version of me with cornrows, by the way, for those that, need the visual, and that they see that picture and they're like, I don't put the two and two together. And then there's a mortgage broker picture, which is kind of like, the signature picture in our emails. And they're like, wait a minute. And then it immediately, they get it. They're like, you mean you were the rapper? And it's just a total icebreaker. So yeah, for those who want to, go out and do your little detective work, the information's out there. I just will tell you where to look. But anyway, yeah. So in short, that's kind of really what it was. I went to college. I actually started off in college going pre-med. I was fortunate enough to go to a high school that was a medical inclined school. It was started by a doctor here in Houston, and went into to college pre-med. Landed a job my freshman year cold calling at a stock brokerage firm. I had no idea what the heck cold calling meant. Went to the stock brokerage outfit, and I'm 46, just to kind of put this in time perspective. So this was all kind of right when Boiler Room and Wall Street, and like the original Wall Street, not the new one, and certainly not Wolf of Wall Street, either. That hadn't kind of come out at that time. So like monogram sleeves, Rolexes, the cufflinks, the white collars, the suspenders, the wood panel walls at Dean Witter, Smith, Barney, Merrill Lynch, you name it all. I worked at them all. And I just fell in love with that world immediately. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to school for 8 years to come out making money like these guys. And I was fortunate to kind of get, brought under the wing of a couple of young guys that were, just young, whippersnappers out of college, at that time making 150 grand a year, driving me around in their Porsches, to, restaurants and fancy places. So I was hooked. But yeah, I had this underlying thing that I wanted to run a record label. So I was taking the money that I was making while I was in college, bought, some little studio space and started growing a record label. Well, my high school buddy who helped me start the record label, I don't know, he was quite clever, I guess. He had the foresight way back then to get into flipping houses. And, I'm kind of accelerating the story here. We sold records at, our last group, our most successful one, we got a little over 30,000 plus records. And this was, like I said, back in the days, a lot of it being kind of sold out of trunks and at car shows and different little radio station promoted, events, but anyway, he was like, yeah, man, look, you kind of had that finance background, this is a way for us, as the record label we didn't become John Puffy Combs and, the likes of those guys, Jimmy Iovine. So he was already pivoting into real estate, and it was really by his lure. He said, hey, why don't you get your mortgage license? Now, back then you could get your mortgage license with, I think all I had to do was turn my computer on, and I got like a mortgage license. It gave it to me just for logging in. It was so simple. And honestly, it was like $99. And I think I said yes, and then submit. And then they were like, here you go. But anyway, and that's kind of it. That the rest was history. At that time, I don't know if it's kind of still the same, but I cut my teeth like everybody else was in the time. You had to have 2 years of working as a loan officer before, even being able to take the next test to go and sit and become a broker. And then you had to go through all the process of the lenders even approving you, and you had no record of doing it. No different like having no credit and then like getting a really crappy credit card. You just you got to build your way up into the game. So I was entrepreneurial, obviously, with the record label thing as an idea. So I was already entrepreneurial once I got into this space. The mortgage outfit that I went to go work for, I'd connected with a guy in there. We became no different like these realtors, that kind of create their own teams in-house. And then the market crashed. 07, 08 happened, and we're sitting in this really nice mortgage office. I mean, we felt like we were really accomplished, loan officers. And then we realized, what's funny, Michael, is that interest rates back then, I mean, I was selling 6 and 7% interest rates. Like those were good rates back then, is absolutely crazy. But we just couldn't afford the cut anymore. We couldn't afford paying the broker, whatever was the split, 25, 30, percent split off of everything, knowing that the market was going to do what it did. And so we had to figure out, well, how do we make more money if the volume is going to decrease? So my buddy, his name was Cody, hence the kind of the name of the team, Code Mark Financial.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It didn't take a lot of beers to come up with the name. But one night we thought, that makes good sense. I guess we were smart enough. We weren't that tipsy to call it Cody Mark, because that wouldn't have gone well. But Code Mark Financial is how it ended out. But we ended up finding one of these fee shops, which I don't even know if those even exist. But there was a guy also here locally in Houston, and he had one of the largest Texas brokerages at that time, and he had something that was crazy, like 300 to 400 loan officers. Now, mind you, they're all paying just this little monthly fee, and most of them weren't really, producing, but he was just it was that model of he was just making money off the desk fee type of thing. But we came in there as, shoguns, and we became his top guys very quickly. And then he offered to sell his business to us, and we just didn't have the capital to basically do it. But we decided to leave once we kind of passed getting the broker licenses ourselves. And then we got one lender to give us a chance to sign up with, which was a lender we were already doing loans through his outfit. And then just kind of snowballed. And then when we left, that created a little bit of vacuum in that office. People knew who we were via our production. And so we ended up picking up some loan officers and some admin, So here out of nowhere, we were just two guys that barely knew what the hell we were doing. And all of a sudden we had like this mortgage company, and we just kind of stumbled along and did the likes. But as businesses go, I bought him out. As we were talking, off kind of mic and camera previously, I had another partner. It's just kind of the nature of, going in and out of businesses and things like that. I kind of got into a legal fight. All, as we were talking about, it was all legal. It was just, we just didn't like each other, and it just kind of dissolved. And I managed to save my mortgage company. But in the process of that, thinking I was going to lose it, I started a real estate business and kind of a flipping business. And I ended up having my mortgage company back. So now I had this very kind of self-sustained ecosystem where I was doing real estate, I was doing, the mortgages, I was doing the flipping and the investing, and then bought into a home renovation company as well. So we just kind of kept this nice little full service package of being able to, you name anything that was required in real estate or mortgage or remodeling your home, and you could come to us. And we had a really good reputation, very specifically in the neighborhood and the kind of surrounding community area where I lived previously. So it just very organically did very well. But I think, as I was telling you, my pockets were nice and full, but my hair was on fire, and I was burning a lot of things down to the ground with that hair on fire that way. And most importantly, it was my family that was kind of feeling that burn. So I had to kind of course correct.
Yeah. And so that came, when COVID hit, right? So you mentioned that COVID hit and you got some kind of new perspective on things. So talk to me about, sort of the business that you built now by design, so to speak, where you're focusing more on the things that you care about as opposed to the things that you need in order to live, right? So how do you run your business today? Like, what are your goals time-wise, business-wise?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to decelerate from at the speed I was running previously, there's that Drake song that's, says, 0 to 100 real quick. Well, I went 100 back to 0 also really quick. It's interesting how I also kind of reflected, man, it took me all these years, well over a decade, to build all of this. And it took me 2 weeks to dismantle the whole damn thing. I mean, it was like between kind of cutting off, I don't need this anymore. There's Twilio, there's high level. I mean, it's just like cut. And then I kind of found myself, you know, sitting around like, well, now I'm different. Now I'm wiser, at least hopefully. I say that humbly. If I could do this all over again, knowing what I know now, how would I do that? And I just slowly but surely started rebuilding a broker shop of one and really just keeping the bare essentials. And the takeaway after my one fresh new year being this solopreneur, as like, you know, a very common catchphrase nowadays too. I found that I made more money last year in terms of like what I took home. I produce less and I work less. And, you know, the big takeaway was I didn't have all of the other ancillary plates that I was spinning to look like I was busy and convince everybody else that I was like really doing things big, and having to keep up with that optical illusion, not only for, you know, what was forward facing to clients and realtors and everybody else, but even the optical illusion that I was buying my own bullshit and feeding it to myself, and I was telling myself it was food. And you know, the fact is now, I guess, you know, I remember hearing from an older gentleman one time when he saw me kind of striving to do all these things. He goes, young man, he goes, when you get my age, you'll realize that trophies are only for young people because they're the only ones that care about that kind of shit. The older you get, you lose, it's not the enthusiasm, but you realize the shiny shit is still shit. It's just got shine on it, right? And then you start to, you know, ultimately figure out what's most important. So anyway, man, I mean, the settling effect is like, at this point, and I was telling you at the beginning, I was like, man, here, I'm just a kid, man. I'm here for you. You know, I'm so at peace with things now. Like it reminds me of the part in the movie, Office Space, the movie, not the TV show, you know, where he kind of gets left in that limbo of hypnosis. And he's like, all of a sudden he goes to work and he's like undrilling, you know, the cubicle walls, and he's going in flip flops and he just doesn't care anymore. And I care, but because I have the space to care differently, I'm finding that everything that I do has more depth. And that means more to me and my soul than the amount of commas that I used to be chasing my bank account.
Is part of it too, like you said, that the trophies were for the, you know, young men or whatever. It's sort of that like keeping up with the Joneses mentality that I definitely was. I'm not going to say I was a victim to that mentality. You know, I chose that, but it was definitely, I want to feel successful. In order to feel that way, I need other people to think I am. In order for other people to think I am, I need to be like doing all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Was that sort of the same with you? I mean, you were like driving the same ship?
Absolutely. I mean, and here's the thing, for whatever it's worth, there's a consciousness of just being American. I love this country and I'm very proud to be American. I love everything that this country stands for, but we are a work your ass off society. And at the risk of it sounding like I don't like to work, I mean, I actually just volunteered 3 hours of my day today lifting heavy shit for my city. And I was happy to do it. And I found myself working harder than the other volunteers that were looking at like, oh my God, we got to lift all this stuff and clean up this nasty warehouse. And I'm like, well, that's what we signed up for. So I am not opposed to working. It's working though with purpose and for like the right intention. And it's easy to get caught up in that level of consciousness that says, you know, consume, essentially, right? Like, I mean, consumption doesn't have to necessarily be buying nice things. You can overly consume for what you think you want to build for a business. You need more office space. It needs to be in a particular zip code because it'll attract more of this. But it becomes a beast that you have to continue to feed.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really spell freedom, I think, at the level that people think, because you can sell yourself on believing that you're making more money, but you're making more money because you got a bigger nut to cover. And that doesn't suggest that one, like what happens if you shut it all down tomorrow? Like there's people still calling, it's like, you don't really escape it the way that you think that you might. And I think the one of the more key terms to pay attention to, like this country was kind of established and built on, was freedom. It's like, do you really have absolute control of your time? And do you have the freedom that your time is spent to invest in exactly what you want to do, not what you have to do to convince yourself this is what I need to have for the purpose of obtaining these other things. It just becomes an empty race. And I've never met anybody or heard any stories of anybody that's laid on their deathbed that has said, in their dying breath, it's like, oh, you got one more thing to say? And he says, yeah, I should have done 1,000 loans last year. It's like, it's always a regret of things that they didn't do that was everything outside of work.
Nothing to do with the work.
So,
yeah. And the thing too is a lot of people, and this is what drove me really early on in my career, was I never wanted my kids to like need or want for anything. Well, that builds weak kids. Like, and they say like weak kids build hard times build strong men, right? Strong men build weak times. It's like, it's this vicious cycle,
Yep.
And so one of the things that I sort of realized is that like, it's more important for me, and this is what you told me also before we got recording, it's more important for me to spend time with my kids, because like you said, on my deathbed, those are the things I'm going to regret not doing.
Yep.
And like, I definitely put in my time with work still, but I'm off at 2:30 or 3 because it's family time.
Yeah.
And so I really respect that for you, finding your way out of that sort of rat race that people get into. So with the new kind of mindset and the way you're approaching your business now, how do you start your day? How do you do that?
So I am a big believer in discipline. I think, having a framework of any sorts, to each his own on what works for them. Discipline, despite I think what people think, discipline is what creates the environment for more freedom. And you start, of course, also learning to detach from things that are not necessary, or in some cases, help one sedate and escape, so on and so forth. So I'm a 4 a.m. guy, and arguably, man, I was really a 3 a.m. guy. We kind of said offline, I like to train for triathlons and things like that, and I've done some, some of the big ones. The only time I started discovering, the only way to log 50 miles riding 50 miles is to ride 50 miles. It's not like, that's not something you can abbreviate somewhere. It's like, you can't do it in bits and pieces. So for quite some time, I just started doing all of my training very early on in the morning, and now it's become quite just naturally programmed. My body just kind of naturally wakes up, even on the weekends, in that 3 to 4 o'clock hour. But what I've done differently is, as I've learned to loosen up about not just business, like even the unraveling of that sense of vibration has spilled over in so many different components of what I like to call like kind of the 4 pillars of, existence, like, my physical existence, my spiritual existence, my family existence, and then the business. And business is last because it's the byproduct of doing the first 3 things first, best, right? Like it that will take care of itself. I think people misunderstand that sometimes, but yeah, 4 o'clock in the morning, man, I've got a buddy, him and I kind of share this tool called Voxer. And man, I'll spend 2.5 hours every morning doing what I just call calibrating. And I get up, I have a cup of coffee, I sit in peace and quiet, and then I start moving into some reading. I do some like journaling. I do some pondering on things. I'm studying for my pilot's license. I'll come and sit down and, carve out something, and, I'll knock out a chapter in there. I speak Spanish, and I'm kind of constantly keeping that sword sharp, because that's another part of, business that I want to be expanding into, especially here in Texas. So I refresh listening to Spanish music, to watching Spanish news, reading. But it's my time, like quite literally. People say that in 2 different contexts. It's like, it's my time to make this happen. Sure. Or this is my time. Like, this is my time to use how I choose to. And it is not impeded by what is going to become the fabric of the day's time and what the day has waiting for me.
Yeah.
But because I have even the space to make breakfast for my kids, help them make their beds, and it's just all gentle, and we practice piano in the morning, man, I'm about as perfectly harmonized and in tune to what music the day wants to bring because of that level of just natural preparation. And, because I don't have all of the other distractions, I kind of almost go through the day in this very Zen-like way because I'm not amped up about anything. There's some passion and fire still in my belly, but it isn't for the wrong reasons because I'm frustrated because something has gone awry or something like that. I see those things and I look at it almost as an opportunity like, wow, how is this making me feel? I used to get triggered by this. How can I actually smooth this out? And, like I said, go in there like Yoda. So I'm hoping that I'm adding on years to my life, Michael, by these practices.
Well, you're definitely adding on more of your time, like you're getting your aspiring goals are happening as a result of that, and then you're living your your life with more purpose and like focus. And you hit the nail on the head, once you get into the bulk of the day, other people will have expectations for your time. And sometimes you can eliminate those, right, by making that person or that thing not important and moving it off or putting it on somebody else's plate. But oftentimes that does have to come through you as a bottleneck. And if you don't get your time in early, it's really easy to get caught up in the day and get stuck in somebody else's time or expectation for your time.
For sure.
I'll tell you, that's something I do not do very well. Like I roll out of bed at like 5:30 or 6 because I've got to get the kids ready for school. So like it's chaos. The first hour I spend in my day is like complete chaos because I'm corralling 5 kids and trying to get them dressed and get breakfast and lunches made and doing all that stuff. And I've started doing like more meal prep in the nights to make that easier. And I'm working through the process of systematizing that, but I'm still not planning, or I wasn't planning on giving myself time earlier than that. I tend to take my time at night, but I think you're probably right. It probably makes more sense to do it during the morning. So that's awesome. Great perspective. When I first met you, I didn't actually meet you at first. When I first learned about you, it was through your video marketing. And through just sort of like the presence, you had a studio, you had like your car, it was like all like pretty production quality, good, Are you using video today in your marketing, and how is that helping you scale your business without taking up more of your time?
Yep. Great question. So that's some of the shiny shit that I talked about kind of letting go. Now, I think what's interesting, depending on what you read, you can say it's like that singularity, but technology is accelerating at such a pace now that things that were once upon a time only afforded for, like, let's say the career professional in any said thing, you may not become a professional, but you can become a pretty good weekend warrior, if you will, on learning anything inside of YouTube. And part of stripping things down was, all right, how do I do what I was paying for? I was paying, 1 year I spent almost $100,000 in just video production. And that wasn't even including the ad spend and then the marketing team behind, paying them to, manage and prop up the whole thing. I was literally just showing up on set like an actor, which I enjoyed doing. I mean, I've always been a bit of a kind of a performer per se, back when I was a kid breakdancing on my street for block parties and things like that. And hence, obviously, the rap career, insert that I said earlier. But now I'm kind of jumping on the bandwagon, but I'm literally following the rules and things that these guys say, like, oh, do these little practices. And it's like, you know what, for once, I'm just going to do what they say and just try these things on for size, right? Like, because we know the game inside of social media and influencership and all the rest of it, that like the actual marketing template is, give content away for free. And then their information, you sign up for their information, and then they work on grooming you for the upsell. And most people don't pay attention to all the free information that's actually delivered. I fall through the funnels because I used to play the funnel game, and I'm looking at them at some level, hacking them. I'm like, they're giving a lot of free shit here. And like, if people just did that, that would be enough to just get started. Like, but people want to buy the program thinking that that's going to accelerate things. And of course, these coaches and influencers and all that, certainly no knocking to them, but that's the template. They make the money knowing that the people are going to pay, but 90% or much higher than that probably aren't going to do the work. It's the 6-minute ads, right? It's like, what if you just did abs every day for a minute, 6 days in a row? You'll build the certainty to do 2 and 3 and 4, and then you'll find out that, yeah, you know what, 6-minute abs doesn't get you abs. You just start figuring it out. That's the thing. So I've just started doing TikTok, man. I mean, it's been fun. It's been cool to just fiddle around with CapCut. All I know is that, as I said, what I had built previously, I'm taking my time and rebuilding it as me, as being the person in each and every one of those departments. And since I have the time, dude, working 10 hours, 15-ish million, in production, some loan officers are going to listen to this and be like, man, that guy doesn't produce shit. And it's like, yeah, but I made over 300 grand last year, like without breaking a sweat, like literally, like I'm breaking a sweat doing other things, things that I enjoy.
Yeah. So, things your kids are going to remember, things your family's going to remember, things that help you physically live longer, things that, that's way more important, right? I mean, I've been kind of thinking about this for myself, because my dad, my grandfather passed away a few years ago, and he left an inheritance to my dad. My dad was talking to me about how to handle the inheritance, and I'm like, I don't want any of it. Like, I don't want the money. I want you to live your life like the way you should live your life, like to your highest capacity, enjoy your time. I'm going to do the same thing, and I hope my kids don't expect a bunch of money, because I'm going to live my life. And you can't do that if you're just a slave to your business, right? Just constantly grinding, And so, yeah, I mean, I love that. And so you're just getting into TikTok. You have a pretty good inventory of videos that you built previously that kind of explain the mortgage process. Is that right? Yep. And are you still using those videos in like on the daily with your clients?
So I am I use this with you and your team, right? Like, I am a big fan of Loom. And, for those that are listening, LOOM, not to be mistaken with Zoom, since all of these things kind of rhyme and sound the same. Yeah. But it's free. It plugs into Chrome, which most people are using Google Chrome anyway as their browser. And there's not a single thing. I first started using it as an internal thing for my team. Like, I need to give an order or an instruction, I should say, of sorts, like, hey, do it like this. And it just started saving me time. Then I started saying, okay, well, now I can do loan estimates like this. And now I can do file updates like this. And before you know it, like I am and I say the word loosely and very gently, like I'm this celebrity inside of my transactions. Like the realtors are like, what is this? And hey, how's it going, Michael? I'm Mark MacInerney with Code Mark Financial, your realtor refer. And, the person sit back and they're like, this guy's talking to me. He did this for me. And, oh, by the way, you're looking at this house. Let me explain what your pre-approval. And it has just been a magical thing. So whether I start really, I'm going to start putting, I guess, more things out there. But again, Michael, with the whole new version of me kicking back and saying, whatever, like I do my videos once a week. And at the moment, that's all, I practice what I try to preach, and I'll just do one at a time right now. I'm not trying to race to knock out something by the end of the year. I'll get to 2 whenever I feel like it. And I'll start learning what the metrics mean when I care to look at what the metrics mean. Otherwise, I'm just kind of doing what it is that I'm supposed to be doing before I'm buying more shiny shit and getting caught up and lost in that all over again, right? So, and I'm just enjoying the process. That's the other thing too. This is all checking off a lot of the boxes in terms of what's happening with dopamine and, making me feel like, man, I was leveraging my daughter for the longest to do the TikTok videos for me. And one day she just called me on my own shit. She was like, why don't you just figure it out? And I was like, we were already talking about it. I was like, see, she's already growing up, I can't even leverage her anymore. I can't wave, a lollipop or, Dairy Queen Blizzards, as like, a way to compensate her. And she was right. And then now what's interesting is now I can go to her for advice, like, hey, how do I delete this thing? And now she's kind of happy to kind of help and participate, and then critique the hell out of how sucky my shit is. But that's fine too. Developing a relationship on a whole different level. But anyway, I'm going through the process, man, of rebuilding it, like one plank at a time as I'm crossing the river. But I'm not in a rush to just try to cross the river. I'm making sure each plank that I step on and go on to the next bit is great, so that even at the end, when I have this great bridge that will traverse that space between where I'm at now and where I'm going to be, I'll also be able to look back at the path that I built and feel proud that I built it. And just knowing like what that feels like, that, you know what, that was me. Like I did that. And not to discount like leveraging team members to do it. I have people that are I'm working with now, you know, processors and things like that, and realtors and all the rest of it. But, you know, there's just that sense of, you know, it's like when you cut your own yard, it just feels good. Just feels like you did something, you know?
Yeah, it is definitely good to get your hands dirty. You know, you need to get in. You can't outsource everything. You know, there's some things that it's inevitable that somebody's going to be better than you at it, or that they'll get it done quicker if that's one of your goals. But yeah, man, learning the thing is great. That's awesome. So then you're kind of slowly moving back into the video production space.
For sure.
What's your favorite part of that, like of the process of creating videos?
So when I used to rap, one of the things that I used to like about writing a song was, and this is just the way that I wired in terms of like the part of me that's an artist, let's say. I think everybody has a form of an artist in them, but I'd hear somebody else's song and there was an instrument in it. You know, it might be a bass line, could be a drum line, it could be a hook, it could be keys, it could be anything. And there was just this connection that I almost naturally had, like kind of almost smelling something in the air, and you're looking for like, where's that coming from? And it just keeps pulling you, you know, through like, it's over here, it's over here. And that creative process of just, I can't wait to get home and write lyrics to the one sound that I heard in the beat, even though the artist was rapping and singing all over it. It's as if I went tone deaf and I couldn't hear it. I could only hear the one thing. And that I get to enjoy again, that when I find a song and they're just corny little, you know, whatever, you know, stock songs inside of CapCut, when I hear that song, I start going through it, and then until my head starts bobbing. And then I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk about down payment assistance programs. Okay. And then I start plugging in the formula, just like how you build a song. It's, you know, 8-bar hook, 16-bar verse, you know, so on and so forth. Then it's like, all right, I got to come up with 3 things. And what's the what, why, lesson, and apply in it? And then shit, man, then I even enjoy now inside of CapCut, like putting little breaks, and like, you know, the minute my hand comes up and the beat hits on it, like, I don't even know if the video is good, but the fact that it was so synchronistic, I'm jamming like, holy shit, I just dropped it right on the beat. And it just makes me feel good.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel good to go through that learning process. And that's the part I'm showing my daughter all the time. I'm like, see how cool? I still got rhythm. Look at this shit. Watch this part. But that's
The creative process gets you up, then gets you excited.
Big time. And again, I it's almost as if I put it up there just for me to watch, because it feels good to enjoy doing something at a very juvenile level of purity, you know, and not being lost in what getting old and crusty, you know, where we forget to just enjoy what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I love that. If you don't love what you do, then why are you doing it?
exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. So then, you know, so you're still doing loans, like the amount that you want, and your daily activities have changed as a result of how you've structured your business. How are you keeping your borrowers sort of captive through the process? Not that it's the most important thing necessarily that they work with you, but I mean, that's obviously a good thing if you're trying to close loans. But how do you keep them kind of captive to you and engaged with you so that you can have a better chance of working with them in the future?
Yep. Great question. So if you couldn't kind of see, there's a little bit of an undertone here about music, and just even studying music theory now. There's a lot that has to do with one's voice. And I am really big on delivering text messages in audio files. And I love it specifically when my clients have iPhones. When they have Android, it's like, dang it. But on the iPhones, and especially if, like, when I say my team, my processing team and my realtor team, I like to have this group text message going on. And I love to be very encouraging, and I make it all sound like it's a team thing. So if I'm doing a loan with you, everything is starting off, what's up, Team Neef? You know, and it's we're doing this together. And I'm always delivering things. And then most people don't respond with the audios, and I don't even realize how valuable they are until we're at closing. And they're like, you know, Mark, you were always just this great, wonderful voice to hear. I got excited when I started seeing the little audio thing come up. It's like, what does Mark have to say today? And which is great because, again, in a very basic, energetic level, I'm just this little voice of calm, quite literally as well as figuratively, during this process. And I don't sound as amped up as I sound now. And I'm not all down like, Barry White either. But, I am just kind of talking like, hey, guys, I just want to let you know the appraisal came in, and I just want to tell you, God dang, man, you guys are moving into a house with $20,000 in equity. What? Like, how do you translate that in a text? What, with a bunch of exclamation marks? You don't, right? But now they know, and I'm like, man, I'm so happy for you guys. I'm so proud of you guys. And then who knows what their day is like on the opposite end as they receive that, but it might be just what they needed to hear to make their day even better. And then a video pops up, and I'm always kind of coming in with that energy inside of the transaction. Everybody's included on my Loom videos inside of the file updates. I've got, all the buyer side, all the seller side, all the title company. So heck, even when I go to the title company is like, you're the guy on the video. And I'm like, I am. And it becomes the next easy thing let me talk to your marketing person. I want to come in here and teach some classes to real estate agents. And a lot of times it's like how to just use Loom, use this when you're pitching your listing, pitches and CMAs and things like that. So that's the one thing, man. And I know everybody keeps talking about it's the experience, it's the connection, but the connection, I think, Michael, goes with just a little bit like how you and I connected here on the front end of this phone call. Like, I don't make it just about the house, the rate, and the mortgage payment. I'm trying to really understand the person, like really understand the person. And I even have clients cry to me, which I'm in such great honor, that is the level of depth that they are willing to be vulnerable to me about things. And, the post-closing things, I'm always asking, let's connect on social media. And I leverage social media in a way that's not just lame, like I'm liking and like loving and hearting and emojiing things. Like, somebody tells me something, like, I know you're into mountain biking, right? So like, if I just started sending you memes on Instagram, like saying, hey, dude, I bet you can't pull this move. We don't need to have a general conversation all the time, but now we all of a sudden are creating a rapport that you knew that I was paying attention to something that I know that you like, right? Yep. So that if I turn around and I say, hey, man, I'm hardtail or softtail, and you're like, oh, bro, you're going to open up to me. You're going to be like, look, get this one, get the Santa Cruz, you should get this model. Like, that's the one I was looking at, right? Yep. So that's how I play. I hate to say the game because it sounds like it's surface level, but now that I have the time, I'm just spending my time investing more in depth. That is what means way more to me than anything else. And I'm happy to do 3 or 4 loans a month. If 3 or 4 loans a month are 3 or 4 people or families that I just connect with at a level that is way beyond the height or depth of what is the ceiling on an interest rate or the floor on an interest rate.
I think that what you'll find, and this is, my hypothesis, so take that, for what it's worth. But, you're a couple of years, maybe a year or two into this sort of new journey, this new kind of business model mindset. Time is, you're protecting it, you're going deep instead of wide with your clients. There's always a point when you build any business and you focus on the depth of your customer or product or whatever, where there's this exponential growth because of the impact you have in that area. And those customers that you spend time, even if it is not surface level, but it is personal, they're going to remember you fondly and refer you as a result of that. And that will grow naturally way more than just this mortgage person got me a good rate.
Right.
You know, it's a significantly better position to be in. It's a much longer burn than just buying leads and churning and burning them out the backside. But it's a more sustainable long-term business model, in my opinion, which is why I think that it's awesome that you're focusing on the relationships with the people and doing what's right for them in communication strategy that makes them feel good, because they're going to want to share their experience with other people.
Right. Yep.
And you can't buy that kind of publicity anywhere, you know? So you talked a little bit about going to your title company, walking in, and they go, "Oh, you're the guy in the video." And you open up a dialogue on just, okay, how about we bring some realtors in? I'll teach the realtors how to use Loom. Is that one of your prospecting techniques for real estate agents? And what else have you used that has been successful? And now you're going to have to be kind of picky because you're wanting to only have a certain amount of business.
Yep.
So how do you approach that prospecting process?
So when I sit down with anybody, I like to see how far back they'll allow me to go. Because the person that sits in front of me is layered with a bunch of stuff. And for me to genuinely open my heart to connect with what is theirs, they need to take the opportunity to open their heart to me first. But that comes in a way of asking questions that gets behind the facade of the mask that somebody is, sharing with me. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that the way that I just look to more like befriend someone, I get way more out of what there's not even something I'm seeking. It's just, it almost starts feeling like there's a groove, and I'm like, now I'm talking to the real person. It's not, and some people will say, oh, they're doing it because, their kid's getting bullied. Yeah. Buying a house and wanting to move to another neighborhood, for example. Yeah, but I'm going further than that. Like, you're an engineer. How did you become an engineer? Like, oh, where is their rap story? Where are they half Irish and half Chilean and have some weird little quirk like that is like me, and then baptized in Greece? Like, whoa, I bet, let's fill in all those blanks real quick. And then we start talking about that. And I'm like, no kidding. So you used to be, whatever it is kind of thing. And it's like, that's where the connection really begins. And that's actually the only place I like to operate, because what I talk about business is easy. It's like, okay, go online and fill out the 1003. And then the rest of it like just starts falling into place. It's the ones and the zeros, right? But I even do that when I go to the title people. And what is good about this now, Michael, is even though I might go through the dog and pony show of going out and having coffee and all the rest of it, what I'm really seeking is this person's soul align with mine? Because I don't want business from someone that isn't going to be in kind of like alignment with me, because I don't need the money, nor do I care about the money for just the kind of, as you said, the churning and burning exercise, because I've been there and I've done that, and it is shallow, and you get everything you want. You get all of the money and you get all of the glitz and glamour of all of it. But I can't say that I feel good about anything, because I'm constantly stressed with the nonsense of what that noise generates. And I'm looking to just make music as I choose to, when I choose to, with those that choose me, and that we kind of choose each other very mutually. As hippy dippy as that may sound, like at a heart and spiritual level, yeah, I want to help people get into homes, but I want us to enjoy this part of the journey together,
So you're focused more on like when you do business classes, they say finding a model match, right? This is like, find a model match realtor, but you're really just saying like, I want to find somebody I can be friends with that's in alignment with my business plans, ideals, the way I approach it, so that like they can go train with me in the morning and run these, triathlons. And the result of that is like a friendship that they're investing in my success as friends, as opposed to somebody who's just like transactional value.
100%. That's it. And it makes, again, as we were talking about, it makes the math work. Because if I want to go do things and I can now include clients that no longer carry that label anymore, they're just people that I helped get a mortgage, and I'm a friend of theirs that does mortgages, and they can come and participate in things that I like to enjoy and share because that's what they like to also enjoy and share too, then it's not work.
Yeah.
And life is not supposed to be that difficult or nor complicated.
Yep.
We make it that way. I'm just willing to sacrifice what it looks like to get there. And that's what this moment of like reset and reprieve is offering me, is
Yep.
just the space to allow things to happen in that very natural way.